Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion, or what's known as LEAD, is under scrutiny, accused of using inaccurate data to back claims of the program's success. Seattle uses LEAD to divert people away from prosecution and jail time when it comes to drug-related offenses. The Washington Policy Center says LEAD is not behind a 58% reduction in recidivism and arrests, a stat that has been widely used to expand the program across the country in garnering bipartisan support from Congress. Take a listen to Eric Zimmerman, who is behind the research.
That number is continued to be cited as LEAD's research. And in 2026, the Seattle City Council was referring to that number, saying, well, the research proves that the arrests for LEAD participants dropped by 58%. I looked at that number specifically, and that's an example of a number that's just not factual. Arguably, maybe it's as high as 20%, but more likely it's closer to zero. And it was misunderstandings.
You're saying it went from 58% to 0%?
If the LEAD advocates have claimed for 11 years that LEAD corresponds to 58% reduction in arrests or in reoffending, I think an accurate read of LEAD's research is that number is closer to 0%. And the reason we can say this is the LEAD's advocates have demonstrably made an error in understanding what the 58% number was. And if you look at what the study says there was no difference in criminal charges. There was no difference for street arrests, or what we would call non-warrant arrests, for people in LEAD and people outside LEAD. And there were a lot of structural or technical reasons that could explain why a 58% number appeared, but it did not mean that there was lower recidivism, lower reoffending, and the real number is likely closer to zero.
They have to be at least helping and diverting some people, and those people are getting help, no?
I think that's an important question. Are these people getting help? I think one of the indicators we look for in anyone's life is, has their behavior changed? If they're in crisis, they enter LEAD, is that crisis resolved? Has their behavior changed in a way that helps that crisis to resolve? LEAD's research has made a claim for many years that there was a 46% increased participation in what they described as an employment continuum. Now, that number sounds great, but in reality, that meant that 3 people out of 163 unemployed people in LEAD, 3 people got jobs. And this is what we would describe as a misleading or maybe even, I'm not going to say dishonest, but certainly not correct use of statistics. I looked up the original research and I compared it and I read it, and I could tell right away that it was that the translation of the research was wrong. And I did a week of study of all of the sources online that I could find across 20 states, across funding organizations, across congressional conversations and transcripts. Everybody used the wrong number. The wrong number originated in the very first press release by University of Washington and Seattle Police Department, where from that first moment the research was published, it mistranslated the 58% into being a reduction in arrests. And from there, no one ever corrected it across 11 years.
11 years.
11 years. And becoming federal law, being invoked by members of Congress to support their amendments to change federal law, to gain bipartisan support, repeated by a dozen members of Congress in official federal proceedings, and receiving hundreds of millions of dollars in federal appropriations and government grants and private donations. And now here we are today, where a large part of the pre-arrest diversion industry has now been built on a false number. I think it matters a lot to the parents of children who've died participating in LEAD. I think it matters a lot to the people who participate in LEAD and do so without hope. And I think it matters a lot for members of Congress who, in their testimony, they said, we now have hope that we've found something that will work to save lives and change people's trajectory when they're dealing with addiction.
Well, the founder of LEAD, Lisa Daugard, is now acknowledging the discrepancy, confirming that LEAD is in fact not behind a 58% reduction in arrests, but that it's talking about the reduced odds of arrests, which are 2 different things. However, she still stands behind the program, saying without LEAD there would be more recidivism, and that the program has continued to grow across the nation, saying in part, quote, not because the 58% reduction was occasionally misstated in lay terms, but because operational partners, including police, prosecutors, neighborhood leaders, businesses, other service providers, and participants themselves have found it effective and helpful. Critics, however, are calling for every jurisdiction that uses LEAD to do a full audit, asking LEAD to provide robust data and transparency backing up their claims of success.